Thanks for being with us today for the Centering Indigenous Knowledge webinar series. I'm Josh Vanek from Montana Campus Compact, and we're excited to hear from colleagues at Salish Kootenai College in a moment here. This is our final session hearing about tribal colleges from Montana. And, we've got all of the past recordings up on our website, and really want to just say a big thank you to those that have come and shared on behalf of their institutions, and really feel like we've had some amazing, rich learning that we've gotten to participate in. So just speaking personally, I really wanted to both thank our presenters from Salish Kootenai College today and those that have presented in the prior 7 sessions. Also want to thank our sponsors, the folks that have underwritten this series and helped us to put this together. Those include our presenting sponsor, the University of Montana, as well as Reach Higher Montana, RJS Associates, and Montana State University. Without their support, we wouldn't have been able to do any of this, and we really appreciate that. At the end of the time together, we've got an evaluation up, and we will put a couple of links in the chat as we're going, so we won't take any more time away from our presenters today. And without further ado, Dr. Carla Bird.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome everyone. As Josh has mentioned, this is our last session, and so it's sad, but we've had a great wealth of knowledge from all of our tribal colleges, and this webinar certainly wouldn't be available without our tribal college partners and presenters. And so we feel very honored and privileged each time a tribal college has presented for us. Today, we have Salish Kootenai College presenting. And when I was at Blackfeet Community College, we actually traveled over to SKC to learn about their native language teacher program, also kind of referred to as SLED, because they've done some phenomenal things with language preservation and revitalization. And so they graciously hosted us as we were working to think about our curriculum at BCC, our Blackfeet language curriculum. And so I feel very grateful for their sharing of knowledge, not only as when we were at BCC, but as we continue forward with partnership. SKC has done some phenomenal things with their language program. And so they offer not only a Salish certificate of completion, but they also offer an associate degree and bachelor degree in native language teacher education. Their instruction and curriculum is guided by 5 core principles that I wanted to share because they were so beautifully written. But the first principle is culturally revitalizing and sustaining instruction and curriculum will lead education to its promise of opportunity and equity. 2, creating connections with the larger community promotes the construction of knowledge. 3, reflective practice leads to the continuous flourishing of both teacher and student. 4, each learner's uniqueness, when valued and invited in all of its diverse forms, enriches the learning experience. And 5, demonstration and application of communication, critical thinking, cultural understanding, and the principles of citizenship cultivates teachers as community leaders. The Salish languages on the Flathead Reservation are at great risk. And one of the things I noted was some statistics that were presented on the SKC website, that a local survey indicated that there were less than 15 fluent speakers that remained, with the majority of them being over 70. Only 3 to 4 of these speakers are actively involved in teaching the language, which is why Stephen and Rosemary and Michael's work in language preservation is so vital for the community of the Flathead Reservation. And so the certificate of completion in Salish language is really to prepare and graduate professionals who are working towards fluency in the Salish language. This allows them the ability to apply for the Class 7 certification through the Office of Public Instruction and to work as Salish language teachers. SKC also offers the Associate and Bachelor of Science in Native Language Teacher Education, which if you get a few moments, you should take a look at the website. Not only is there's a significant emphasis on language acquisition, but also instruction and curriculum, being able to be a teacher in the school system. So again, I wanted to express my gratitude to our presenters today, Rosemary, Stephen, and Michael. And again, this is our last webinar, and so we appreciate your continual attendance. If you would like to support our Native students, I would recommend a small donation to one of our tribal colleges or to the American Indian College Fund. And of course, donations for language and culture revitalization are always needed. So to our guests, please consider that. But thanks again for everyone attending, and I'll hand it over to Rosemary, Stephen, and Michael.
Okay. Hestanyakake, Pestia, Rosemary Matt, Quest. So hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Rosie Matt. I currently serve as the chair of the Native Language Teacher Education Program here at Salish Kootenai College. And I'm going to go ahead and let Michael and then Steve introduce themselves. And then we're going to just go through some history of Salish language in our area, and then the NLTE program development. And then we actually have a new program on campus, our Culture and Language Studies program that Michael will share as well.
Lemlem Shirley, Hesselhalt Pesia. It's great to see you. Thanks for asking us, Carla and Campus Compact, to share. It's really exciting and such an honor to work with this team to do the important work we're able to do. And a blessing to be able to share. Hopefully we can help provide some kind of support within this larger network for one another through this work. So it's great to be here. Just so you all know, if I have to turn off my screen, I'm in a location that doesn't have great internet service once in a while. And so I may turn off my screen, but I will still be here with you. Just as a little forewarning.
My name is Steve Arca. I am the new Indigenous Cultural and Language Specialist here at SKC. And I think I'll take the first leg when we get started. Okay. So I said, my name's Steve Arca. I was born and raised in Ronan, born in St. Ignatius a long time ago, 1963. And well, not that long ago, just a little while ago. I apologize. I just recently came up with Bell's policy. So I try to, if you have a hard time understanding me, that's why. So the history of our language revitalization efforts. This map here, of course, just shows just a kind of a brief shot of where our people were. The outlined yellow outline inside gives our reservation today. The one on the bottom in the Bitterroot was in the treaty that was supposed to be looked at but never was. And there's two other Salish speaking tribes who are no longer with us, the Tunachin and the Simteose. And we're the easternmost of all the Salish and speaking people. From here to the coast of Washington, up into British Columbia, and that whole area, we're all one people. But we're all separated by all these reservation boundary lines today. So about 1970-ish, 74, around there, some people took a look at what was happening in our communities here. The languages seemed to be dying off. All our speakers were probably ages 30 and over. No new children were coming up speaking the language. There was very few at that. And so our elders were noticing this, and they were starting to try to teach in some of the schools, the public schools, and have classes and stuff. From that, they started, I think about the same time SKC started, Two Eagle, they started the culture. What we have here on this reservation is culture committees. We have one representing the two Salish speaking tribes, the Salish and the Kalispels, in St. Ignatius, and we have one representing the Kasanka, the Kootenai people up in Elmo. So there's 3 tribes make up this reservation, and this basically on the homelands of the Kalispel people, the Kudli, we call ourselves. I mean, the meaning behind that is people of the Camas. So around there, they decided to start the culture community, and they had it all together as one, and they quickly realized it needs to be separate, at least from the language groups. So the Kootenays, the Kasankas had theirs up in Elmo, and we had ours, our 2 tribes, the Salish and the Kalispels down in St. Ignatius. They started, Johnny Arlee was a part of that, and he had this good idea of starting to record. Got a tape recorder, pushed record on there, and they were sitting together with coffee and food, and they started talking to each other in the language, and we started recording them, and then in the next few years, they did as much recording as possible before those sitting elders started disappearing. And then they started doing, they picked up, we don't have a written language, they picked up the International Phonetic Alphabet, and I think it's kind of mixed with the American Phonetic Alphabet as well. And that's the spelling you'll see with our language. And we kind of adopted that in, and they started using that, and they started teaching as much as they could, like anywhere else. They would teach numbers, colors, animals, greens, not knocking this, but it's pretty common. Anybody that in Indigenous languages, you'll see that's some of the things that come up, right? And we kind of kept doing that, but they weren't really producing any new speakers. So there's a few people here and there who have the discipline, right? Who can pick it up and stay after it, and have tenacity to stay with things and ask questions, and don't give up. So there's a few here and there who would do those things. Then around 2000, 4 young people got together, and they came up and they said, hey, let's start an immersion school. And I'm sure they weren't the first ones who ever thought of this, but they got together, and then Melanie Sandoval, Cheney Bell, Cheney Pete, and Josh Brown, they got together and they went to the council, and they probably had quite a few meetings, and that's where Inkusum was birthed, and they credited it to going up to Custwood School up there, and then they heard them talking up there, and then they followed through, and they heard them say, hey, just start a school. And so they did, and they found out, through the years, right away that the elder, they had their fluent speakers and they had the children, but the teachers in the middle didn't have the language, and they were having a hard time, moving forward with this, and they seen that and identified that through a few years of trial and learn. And as they picked up and started moving, they quickly realized, we need to teach our adults. And that's where the adult program came in, the apprenticeship program. And, we didn't want to put the weight of learning language on all the children. We just wanted to give them a safe place to learn. And we want to teach them what we want to teach them. We want to teach them language. We want to do all this, but the ultimate goal is to not teach language, but to use our language to teach our children what they want to know and what we as a community want our children to know. So, and through that process, they like, well, let's teach adults, because the teachers didn't have the language, but they needed to be in there, and the fluent speakers were telling them, and they needed to have that combined. They needed to have a teacher who had language teaching these kids. And so that's why we came up with this plan. And it had an adult curriculum that we borrowed from our relatives downriver in Washington. They came up with this curriculum. And it comes in, right now it's in 3 levels. And our elders would say, hey, you know, we don't learn that. That's not how we learn. Books are not the way to learn. And they're right. And the best #1 way to learn any language is through straight up immersion. But we don't have that option here. We have very few speakers, you know, and I think linguists will say to become fluent in a language, you need to be around the language from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you go to bed at night for 8 years straight. And you become, I guess, a level of fluency. I don't know. Fluency for me is like kind of a, since I've been involved in language, can be kind of an F word. It can be weaponized to use it against each other or whatever, you know. I don't care about those things. We just want to become highly proficient enough to, and that's why I use that word, because people start using, oh, who's fluent, who's not fluent. You know, I think that only attends to our elders, our first language speakers, honestly. And until we can teach our children in our homes and they grow up with that language as their first language all their lives, that's fluency, right? But I don't have that. I'm a second language learner. But as second language learners, we kind of get caught up into that whole mess of things. But so we want to be able to teach our children in the language what we want to teach them. So as adults, we have to do that. We have to take that responsibility upon ourselves. So we focused on this curriculum here. It kind of gives a brief update. Level 1, you know, your books, how many books are in? There's 2 books in each level. 3 levels, it takes approximately 2 years to get through. And you become even at that point, you're just highly proficient enough where you can go to a fluent speaker, ask them in the language, anything you want to know, and they respond in the language, and you understand each other. They understand you, you understand them, and you can just speak in a language, learning more things. The fluency level is a lifelong journey, right? And it's going to take a long time, but not that we learned the language in 2 years. We learned it enough to become proficient enough to use the language and be understood, and to understand a fluent speaker coming back at us. And then we rise up on that level from there. So the first level here, you know, we just go in and we're not teaching you how to write. We're not teaching you how to read it. We're not doing any of those things. We're just trying to teach you, because like for our children in schools today, and they don't teach them how to read until they're kindergarten, 1st grade, you know, 5, 6, 7 years old, where they're fluent in English. And then they start teaching them. You become fluent in the language, and then you start learning to read and write in that language. That's the same thing that's going to happen here with our adults. We're not teaching that, but we've already learned how to read and write in English. So we assume when you start learning the language that we should learn what's the alphabet? How do I pronounce the sounds? You know, you do all these things that you do when you're in school, because we started school at kindergarten, 1st grade, but we forget we were already fluent in English when we started it, right? So we need to bring that to our adults too. We need to bring them to a level real quick, but because we already know how to read and write in English, and we're using that phonetic alphabet that's basically based off the English language, we start figuring it out. You know, you start learning how to read it as you're hearing the sounds. What we want you to do is, like in this picture, excuse me, there's those pictures there, and those represent, this particular one represents sentences, but each one represents a word. And you just know when you hear the language, when you hear a word, you're gonna like know what that word is, right? when Rosie and Michael introduced themselves, one said Hes Niakoke, the other one said Hes Kolchot, they're both saying good day, good afternoon. As soon as you hear that, oh, that's what they're saying. That's what we're trying to get from the students in this first level. The second book there is stories, and then getting putting the set and structure together, and learning how to, you're hearing it. Luciu Malta is necessary. You can say that backwards, because when you start learning language, one language is backwards, or the other, either English is backwards or Salish is backwards. You start trying to what's going on here? When you translate literal going across, and you start realizing that. So there's 2 points of worldview. Now, when you learn a new language, you're basically seeing it from another point of view, right? So through the English lens, this is how we see things. But when you start learning our languages, we're starting to see it from the point of the world through the worldview, through our ancestors, through our ancestral languages. And so stories 1 in that second book in level 1, that's where you get the connectors and all these things. Level 2, kind of getting into, this is like college entry level stuff here when you get into the language ways. You're learning grammar, you're learning all these different things like they would teach in Spanish and stuff, all these little nuances about languages and stuff, you start catching all this stuff. And as stories 2, the second book in level 2, you're going to be more intense, and you're translating now. You're translating, you're not getting the translations for you. You're sitting there starting to translate the language yourself with the teachers as a class. And then level 3, and each level, every book you're going to increase. Like they have 500 vocab words first book, another 500 second book, 800 over here, another 500 there. So your vocabulary is increasing all the way through, and you're building a real strong foundation. And at level 3, so those first 2 levels there, you'll finish that in 1 year. That's what we're figuring out right now. We start them October 1st, and they end September 30th. And we get done with these first 2 levels, these first 4 books. And it takes about a year for this 3rd level. It's pretty intense. Book 3, we go through the seasons, all 4 seasons: fall, winter, spring, and summer. And they go it's kind of like the, I think if some of you heard the teaching about the round. So you go to a seasonal, what do we do during this season? We're hunting, we're trapping, we're, getting ready for winter. We're doing all the last few things. Some of the ceremonies we might do that year, that time of year, whatever. Late fall hunts and fishing and stuff. It gets ready or setting up for summer camp or winter camp. Winter time comes, and this is for our people. We do our winter ceremony. So this is a big time of year for us, and it's winter is where we survive. So when you say, how old are you? Usually you're counting your winters. How many winters have you survived? Because winters were long, and you had to get a food supply that could last all winter. Snow would get pretty deep. You couldn't drive to a Costco and get something you needed. You had to be prepared for it. You had to have everything in hand. So the winter time was a very important time for us, for our people. That's when we would tell our stories, our creation story, and from those things, from our creation stories, and that's where we get our unwritten Indian laws, and that's where we would talk about, it's a just an example that's not necessarily ours, but like, you can't whistle at night, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you have to do this. All those different things in every nation of people is different, probably based on their creation story. But this is where we get all our unwritten laws. And one of those, we can only tell our stories during the wintertime, our Coyote stories. And Coyote is a kind of a crazy character, he's everything. He's kind of like, that's who we are, right? We're smart, we're powerful, and we're brag about ourselves. We think highly of ourselves, and we're silly, and we're crazy, and we do crazy things. So a lot of the characteristics within us is like Coyote. But Coyote was given a task to kill the monsters before us, so that's the only time we could tell those stories was in the wintertime. And today, a lot of those things are sitting in, we have the internet, you have books, you have different things, but we have a lot of our people scattered throughout. So we have to figure out ways to get this information to people, but to keep those laws on top of that, right? So we have to have some sort of protocol so it's strong enough for our people to follow, and to ask for people on the outside to have respect for that, right? And so how much do you share and what you don't share becomes, you know, an issue that never was before. So and then you go into your springtime, and then when you're coming out of winter, you know, and then your first plants, like right now coming up, is bitterroot. And your bitterroot is coming out, and that's one of the first ones we harvest and go after. There's ceremonies for that. There's songs for that. There's certain ways we do those things. We greet that's the first of the fruits coming for the whole next season before snow flies again. And that's what we prepare for, right? All the animals are waking up, from their hibernations, and all the plants are coming back to life, and some of the birds that migrate are coming back. Also, all those things are happening in the summertime. Is kind of another time is like a celebration. So we have all our stories and stuff connected in that book. So a lot of information in that first, in book 2 and level 2, or level 3, I'm sorry. And then the stories 3 back there we have that kind of tells a lot of the stories of our ancestors, previous, our newest ancestors, our elders that are gone, who were there in the 70s, that Johnny R. Lee had the mindset to push record on a tape recorder as they were sitting there in the 1970s and early 80s. As those elders were sitting there talking about long ago, you know, what they knew then. So we take a lot of those stories and we put them on, we transcribe them in the language, and then we ourselves as students work through translating those, and we come to know them. So that then we're working on a level 4, and to take that to another level. And then we're working really hard, diligently, to bring all of our people through this. So when you're learning language, you're not only learning how to talk, right? You're learning your culture, you're learning your ways, you're learning, so like we're Salish and Kalispel, Salish and Kootenai. Two of the same language, but two distinct different nations. There's us, Salish, Kootenai, there's the Coeur d'Alene, you know, Stutsuit, there's Spokane, Colville, there's 12 nations inside that reservation over there. Then you got your Shuswap, your Thompson, you know, Coastal Salish, all that, but we're all under one. And that's what's hard for people to identify here with our people, is like, even within our own people, the identities, but the removal of the language from our people has removed so much, right? And it's such a powerful thing that colonization, assimilation, it was very successful. They were very successful at what they did. And it was not the only things they did. There was you know, when you learn the history of everything, there was an onslaught which was continual, and it's continuing today. But our fight to resist that is to bring back our language to our people, to take something that was removed from us. You know, they worked so hard. They spent so much time and so much money to remove this from us. This is exactly what it's going to take for us to regain and to reinstate that within our people. You know, we got the mindset of what is the benefit of learning the language? What our economic benefit is there? You know, and it's like, it is phenomenal what people think of that, you know, because like you want to know the turnaround on that. But honestly, in time will answer that question for those people with that mindset, because we start reinstating all our values and our ways and identities back in our people, and that production level starts arising from that. While at the same time, we're still fighting the same monsters that everybody else is facing. You know, you got fentanyl, you got the black tar heroin, you got alcohols, and you got all these things, these social illnesses that are out there in all these communities. Well, they're in ours as well. And to me, how do you fight against that? And suicide, you know, what do you do? I don't know the answers to that. I think if anybody had that answer, you know, they would be getting wealthy and traveling the whole world, sharing their secret. But I think one of the things I can do is so overwhelming. I just like focus on the language. I learn it and teach to everybody I can, standing beside all the other people, the teachers, the firemen, the policemen, everybody in this whole, all our communities stand shoulder to shoulder, and looking at the enemy and fighting them that way. And just offering what I have, offering what I can do. I can teach you how to say these things. I can teach you more than the bad words, I can teach you how to communicate. I can teach you about our history of our people. I can teach you our songs, our ceremonies. I'm still learning all those things myself, and the importance of the identity of me is probably is the same as important as any of my fellow tribes people. Some of us were fortunate enough to grow up with it around us, to participate in all those things. Many of us were not, and that's because the effectiveness of assimilation and colonization into the boarding schools and the removal of our languages and stuff, especially here on what's known as the Flathead. That name was given to the Bitterroot Salish, I think, on one of the stories when Lewis and Clark came through. It was their sign language, was that, and that's the way their hair was. The way they fixed their hair, and that was their sign. And ours is like this, because we're the paddlers and the canoe people, the Kalispels, and so that they started calling them Flathead, and they don't like it. Kalispels definitely, and the Kootenays sure don't like it. None of us like it, but it's a Flathead Reservation, Flathead Lake, Flathead River. All these things, and we're trying to get rid of that, but yeah, it's all over us. Where our own people don't even understand that. That's how effective things are. That's what education. Through learning our languages, learning our culture, learning our history, us as a people, whatever happens out here is that we can't control, but within our people, we can control. Through language, that restores your identity of your people, and that restores the heartbeat and the blood flow of our people, right? It's so important, it's so strong. And it's still here. Our elders say it will always be here. It's right out there in the mountains. It's in the waters, it's everywhere. It'll never go away, but it's just waiting for us. So, I think I'm getting a sign. Am I done? Yeah. And so, through this time here, yeah, I'm being signaled I'm done. So I'll transition this out. I could talk about this all day long, and I just kind of had a hard time starting out, but I'm getting the momentum going, and I can't quit. I obviously am passionate about what we all are, and I hope you all are very passionate about whatever it is work you guys do, because it's very important to have that passion, to attack what you need to attack. And through this, and I actually I'll just say a couple of quick things before I pass this over to Rosie. I had the opportunity as we started learning the language and stuff to be a part of this. I seen it birthed. I seen the student who said, hey, we need help, and I seen the people take action on that. And Rosie will tell that story. And I got to get the associate's degree out of that, and I got to get the Bachelor of Science degree out of that. And I'm in my master's program right now here at SKC, and I'm hoping to go on to a PhD. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you understood the words. Thank you.
Yes, Steve, he does a great job of sharing that history, something that not all of us can do so greatly. So, and yeah, we're so fortunate to have him now at SKC and be a product of our program and the apprenticeship program. And so the NLT degree program really started from myself and Steve actually were working at Inkusum School, and we had a grant. We had created the apprenticeship program there, and we had created several students who were good speakers of the language. And as he was stating, we did know that we needed the other teachers to get the same language fluency. And so at that point, we were saying, we would like to put these apprentices into the classroom and put the teachers into the language apprentice program. And the new apprentices were pretty scared about that. And they were saying, we do not want to go into a classroom. We don't know how to manage kids. We don't know how to do lesson plans. We don't know what we're doing, right? And so that started this conversation about how do we get them the skills and the tools, a basis of knowledge so that they can be successful in the classroom. And Michael was here at SKC, and we had some conversations. We were in the middle of writing a grant of, well, maybe we'll offer them some workshops. We'll have somebody from the teacher ed program offer these workshops. And when we lined out everything that we thought these teachers would need, we realized they were learning and doing a lot. And they should probably get something for all of their efforts. So we talked about creating a certificate. Certificates are good, especially in community colleges, because it helps with students finding success, after 1 year, and encourages them to move on. But a certificate didn't really give any students a degree. A lot of times in hiring, they're not looking at certificates. And so then we talked about an associate's program. We actually built an associate's program first, which was a 3-year associate's program, which was super heavy, intense. And the reason for that is because, of course, when you're creating new programming, it's like, well, let's try this out. We think this will work. Let's try it. But of course, it's hard for us to eliminate any classes that we think these language teachers would need. And so without a bachelor's degree yet created, we were trying to squeeze so much into an associate's program. The other reasoning is because all of our students go through the intensive Salish language curriculum, or the apprenticeship program. And that is 2 full years, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 at the Culture Committee. And that is where our language teaching and learning is based out of. And so one thing I will say too is that this was a partnership. It was kind of an ask from Inclusum of how do we create more language teachers, but also how do we work together to do this? And so SKC is serving as a mechanism, an avenue for students to become language teachers, but that is driven by a community need, and it's in partnership with our tribal culture committee. And so it's not something that we developed and then said, okay, we think this would be good for you. We're working together of what we think would be best for our community. Also, I will say, I always think Creator works in amazing ways. And as we were starting this and writing a grant for it, we actually submitted it twice before we got funding. And when we actually got funding to create the Salish Language Educator Development Program, the tribe also at the same exact time started the language apprenticeship program at the Salish and Kalispel Culture Committee. And so the tribe does fund 10 full-time apprentices, and not all of them will be in our program, but we offer that curriculum that Steve talked about. We're now able to offer those classes on campus for credit, which was not available prior to this program at all. So now, as you see, we've added a bachelor's degree now. And so now we have a 2-year associate's, which is a little more manageable, but still way different from a normal degree program, because by the time they get their bachelor's degree, they will have completed 250 credits, which is really high. But it is because we are trying to do all this intensive intensive Salish language instruction at the same time as Gen Eds and all of their curriculum teaching methods classes. So here are some of the classes that are unique to the bachelor's program or to the program in general. And you will see that some are really specific to Salish and Kalispel culture, but also the Native Language Teacher Education Program. So we're trying to create students who really understand what they need to do to be effective language teachers, which is different from being maybe an elementary education teacher. So the list on the left is new classes that we have developed. Now, we still have a need to build teaching capacity for the native language teachers in our area, but also at the college level. And so we have had to work with a lot of different people in the like Northwest region to Canada, build relationships, meet people to offer these classes, because we might not have the expertise here in our area to offer these. And so we've worked with other language experts and teachers from Washington and Idaho and Canada to try to offer these classes. And we're still doing that and building capacity to try to make sure that those classes are offered in the best way as possible. So the classes on the right are classes that were already in education classes. And so those have just been added. So you can see that they're getting a lot of really good skills and development to be effective teachers in a language classroom. So lastly, we had our very first language graduates this past year. This is our group. You can see Steve there with Stephen Small Salmon, one of our first language speakers and immersion teachers. He also works at Incusum. But this was pretty monumental, and we're pretty proud of these this first class. And we will have a second class graduating. Walking this spring. We have a few more, we have 3 more, and they'll actually complete in the fall. But we're super proud of these guys for all their work and effort. So now I'm going to pass it over to Michael. She's going to share the newest degree program that has kind of been created now through partnerships with our community.
Lumsh Rosie. So as Rosie and Stevie have mentioned, much of this work is very much, or has been very much, a result of our elders starting in the 70s, even starting going before that as well. And this recent work also has been a request from community as well. So being Incusum, the apprentice program, NLTE, and now CALS as well. The beautiful thing about CALS is that through our partnership with the Salish Kalispel Culture Committee, Atawen Inkashola, our former director, whom we all miss dearly, actually asked President Boham in a conversation where we were talking about maybe 8 years ago. We were talking with Atawen and Cheney Bell about a new program that was being offered at that time at SKC, which was also the result of a community ask. That program was tribal governance and administration. And so that was built as an answer to a request as well. But what Atawen had said at that time when we were meeting, actually where I am right now, we were meeting with him, and he said, tribal governance is important. We need people to lead our tribal government system. We need people who have those skills, and that's good. However, we are also, and you've heard this earlier in our conversation in what Rosie and Stipe had presented earlier, is that our language speakers and our knowledge carriers, all of our cultural knowledge, were entering a phase in their lives where they were close to leaving us. They were in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and above. And due to our close connection or close, like heavy impact of our boarding school, the Ursulines boarding school, we have been impacted greatly by colonization. And so as a result, that was the generation who has the most knowledge remaining, right? And so except for our newer learners, but there is a wide gap of people, of elders, who maybe weren't able to be raised with those teachings. And so what Atuan asked for that day, he said, please, can you help us build cultural perpetuators? And he was clear about that. He said, not people who just know the language and go forward, or just know the culture and go forward, but people who actually live and do that work with our community and help other people learn. And I think that's the key, is that Atuan's vision, and as we worked with him for the years that we were able to work with him on visioning this and actually putting the paper to the pencil to the paper, writing it all out, he was very clear that he wanted people who would share the knowledge that they gained, because that's what elders, that's how we do it. That's how we pass our knowledge on. We learn and we share. And so these are some of the pictures that have come out of our resulting culture and language studies program. And just in the last, let's see, we're in our second year now of the program. And Rosie, if you're just going to the next slide, that will be perfect. So what we ended up with, our program goals for CALS are to encourage and support the development and implementation of scale educational practices to vitalize, perpetuate, and pervasively integrate our Salish and Kalispel cultural arts, worldviews, and languages. Number two, to grow the number of highly skilled cultural artists, knowledge keepers, and/or language speakers. And number three, for as many students and community members, but especially to graduate cohorts of 3 to 5 focused apprentices as possible. So we can start to build that capacity. And what we're finding as we're implementing this, you can go on to the next slide, Miss Rosie, thank you, is that as our apprentices are being becoming more and more aware of the values of the scale values that they hold. Sorry about my computer bouncing around there. I get excited and then I move things. But as they become more and more aware of the values that they hold, we're seeing that perpetuation is taking place. So we have 4 apprentices currently who are doing this work, along with Tim Ryan is our Salish and Kalispel cultural specialist, and Linda Ferris is our Salish language specialist. So they are the ones who are sitting in this second year after the first year of intensive language. They're the ones sitting with the apprentices doing the integration and the educational aspects, so that our apprentices have opportunities to pass the knowledges that they are learning on to youth, community members, campus, people from our campus as well. So you can see some of these values here, and we're just seeing a beautiful transition from one knowledge holder to those people who are in that middle space right now, those apprentices who are learning and passing knowledge on as well. Rosie, will you go to the next one for me, pretty please? So our curriculum, as Stipe was starting to talk about, for the Culture and Language Studies program, our curriculum is centered on our seasonal rounds. So what are we doing and supposed to be learning at very specific times of year? And so this is a graphic that Tim Ryan has developed over his years of learning. And you can see how right now, like CB was talking about in January, February, that's the time we're telling our stories. We're doing our ceremonies, we're singing, we're doing various specific bison hunting or deer and elk and other things as well. We're moving right now into our spring seasonal round. So the stories and the language that's integrated within our cultural learning on the land is focused on Bitterroot, on first roots, on gathering teepee poles and doing lodgepole, looking at other camas towards the later spring, and so on. So you can kind of see how that all shapes the work we're doing. As Steepy was talking about with the language curriculum, that third year, that level 3, that's the part that we really are integrating within our second year of the CALS program, where students have transitioned from being at the culture committee, learning all day, every day, to being at SKC all day, every day, and learning through this integrated, which we're still working on. Of course, there's always challenges and beautiful successes that come out of that, but they are working on the integrated knowledge transference as often as possible in the land, but also with other folks who are learning as well, especially within the schools this year. We have also been doing encampments, seasonal encampments, or seasonal learning events, I might say. And so that's been really profound as well, to have the opportunity to be out on the land with folks from the community and campus and youth from our local areas as well. So will you go ahead and transition to the next slide, please? So this is what the program looks like on paper, or the quick overview. The first year you can see is that intensive language learning, very similar to the native language teacher ed program, but also very specific, like CP explained, levels 1 and 2 of that language curriculum with the Salish language apprenticeship. Levels, or the years 2nd and 3rd, are focused on that integrated learning that's seasonally based. And then the 4th year is where our apprentices, we're really excited to see how this goes, not next year, but the following year. We have 4 apprentices currently. And what they're doing right now is they're building relationships with community members. They're building relationships with various knowledges that they're learning. They're building relationships with themselves and learning what is important to them in their hearts and their spoos. And so they're going to take something else, or their work, the work that is meant to them, and do a deeper dive and really begin to work with community members and mentors to learn more specifically about that. And then they will transition even more deeply and in a deeper way into being knowledge sharers, specific to all of the knowledges they hold, but especially that Sinka else. Lemlepsh Rosie for next slide. And then do we have time for the video?
Yeah.
Or Carla, do you want to wrap us up?
No, let's play the video.
I think, do we have the 4-minute? I think we might have just enough time. Possibly. Lemlepsh. I guess as we're transitioning to here and pulling it up, I might say this is these are some student testimonials about their involvement in this work. This specifically relates to the Native Language Teacher Education Program, if we can pull it up. And yep, Rosie's getting it going. So it's really cool to see the various value systems and the importance of this work that everybody is sharing throughout. CP, would you like to add anything as we're transitioning, or Rosie?
No, I just like to say, as far as testimonials and for people talking about their experiences, every individual is going to be a little bit different, and it's all based on who they are and their identity. And that's a powerful, testimonials are powerful in that sense, because then the people watching may identify differently with everyone, and it's important to have as many as possible.
And maybe instead of playing the video, we should just transition and see if there are questions. Would that be good?
So if you have a question, you can put that in the Q&A and Josh and I will help facilitate that. Okay, so one of our questions is, are your programs open to outside the tribe peoples?
Either Rosie or Stevie or I can answer that. I guess I'll jump in. Ottawan was very clear along the way that the Culture and Language Studies program should not be for only enrolled people, but from people from our community, especially to include descendants as well. So usually we look at enrolled members as well as first generation, maybe even second generation. The key criteria for our program is that we are really looking for people who have the desire and the value system already embedded within them to want to share and pass on knowledge accurately and authentically. And so for the CALS program, we actually go through an interview process and have elders on the committee with us as we're choosing that. Rosie or Stevie, do either of you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add just that we do have like she was saying, non-tribal members currently. It's just a matter of if they can feel comfortable at the Longhouse, if they can be respectful, if they can be good students. But as far as the college is concerned, we visit with as far as NLTE in the first year, and we usually visit with people and just make sure that it's a right fit for them. But even at the culture committee right now, we have a non-tribal member that comes on Fridays and learns. And as a part of our community, we want everybody to learn because we know that just helps break down those culture and language barriers within our students and our community. So.
Yeah, I just on top of that, you know, there needs to be some vetting in place because like I was talking about protocols for when stories are told, how they're, you know, and that they're even within our own people, you know, we tell our stories and our history and stuff. And if I'm the one who's telling the story and I tell a whole bunch of people, and then somebody starts hearing the story and so, hey, where'd you hear that from? Oh, Steve Arca over there. Then they hear it again and they, oh, hey, now he's getting kind of goofy with his telling the story here. This is not right. And they'll, you know, pull me aside and say, hey, you need to not do this. This is what I heard this, what you're telling them. Is this true? You know, and I'm like, yeah, I just thought it was better than how it was really told, you know, or whatever my reason is, whatever my agenda is. This is stuff these are things passed down, you know, that's what a protocol coming down. This is from our ancestors done to us. They are oral traditions and we need not to sway from that. We can put our salt and pepper on these things, of course, you know, because that's what storytelling is, right? You embellish a little bit. You're good storytellers, you know, it's an art, but an example of as such as that, then you also want to have, you know, keeping it in a straight line. You don't want to interrupt it that way. And so we need to be careful of the agendas of different people, our own people included, as well as people from the outside. And of course, with everywhere you go to New Zealand, you go anywhere, people like to hear you say, even here in America, we speak Merkin, you know, speak our languages, you know, it's always nice to have when people come and greet you in your languages and stuff. And like, oh, okay. You know, it's an awesome thing as far, but there are some fine gray areas in there, and we all need to be careful of those things and navigate those as such.
There is one other question. Are the 5 core values listed on the SKC website? I think they are. We have a set of core, the mission, the vision, and then core beliefs and standards for our institution. But we also, I believe the core values are also on the NLTE website, as well as the Culture and Language Studies website. I was going to share those earlier, and then I got busy with our presentation, and so I didn't share that, but they're in the academic programs area. So maybe we can share those with you after the fact.
So we got a thank you from Anne and Phil. And then we have maybe just a couple minutes for a last question. Kelly McDonald, do you plan to expand the language to eventually teach language more extensively in public schools in the area also?
That's a really good, quick answer. In 2016, the Salish Kootenai Culture Committee brought together a representatives from all of the different language programs throughout the reservation, and they developed a 20-year strategic plan. And so Kelly, absolutely, that's the goal, right? But this is such an intensive process that we really need to do our best to build up and support capacity building of our language teachers. And so the school systems are wanting people to come in and teach. And we also need teachers at the Longhouse and at the college and in all of these different places. And so that actually helped set the trajectory for the NLTE program and the CALS program in 2016, that we actually need at least 40 highly skilled language educators who have both sets of skills. So keep that in mind. It's a long process, but it is in our goal in the long haul.
Yeah, I also want to share just really quick that a lot of our students, just from their experience in public school themselves, we're finding that they don't want to go back into public schools. They want to go into NCUSM and they want to go to the culture committee. And so still navigating that, those partnerships, and so that we can get enough teachers trained and enough teachers that feel welcome in our public schools on our reservation.
Well, I think that's all of our questions. Again, thank you for your time. I know when you're running an academic department, your time is precious because there's teaching and grading and all of that. So we appreciate the time that you've taken to share with us. We have much gratitude for that. So thank you so much. And thank you all to everyone that's been with us through all 8 webinar series. Josh, do you have any last comments?
No, just want to thank Rosie, Steve, and Michael today, and to those of you who attended this series, and especially to you, Carla. Thank you for your vision and leadership on this. It's been really special. So thanks a lot.
Lem
Lech.